You are live.
Hello! Hi guys! Awesome! So I'm just gonna wait a minute or two and then we're gonna go over our supply list. How many people are going to be following along? Does anybody have their whole setup? You're gonna watch it and make it later or just watch for fun?
Yes, Kathy, if Sam's watching.
Is Sam watching, Kathy? Awesome. Yeah, Mom and Dad are here too.
Hi.
They're going to be reading out questions from Instagram and from Facebook. So if you guys have questions throughout the demo, once I turn the camera down and we start working, if you have any questions, write them out in the chat and they will read them out, or I will go back and read them after too.
The thing is on.
Yay! Kathy Brinkley says hi, Michelle and Mike.
Hi, Kathy Brinkley.
Hi, Kathy. Hi, Sam.
Awesome. Yay! Okay, so awesome, you got your gingerbread made. Yeah, make sure before we start, guys, that you have your gingerbread dough made if you're going to be following along, and that your oven is preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you haven't preheated yet, go ahead and do that, because we're going to start with some Isomalt pieces, but then we're going to very quickly go into our gingerbread. So make sure your oven is preheated and ready to go once we are ready for that.
Everybody got their supplies?
Yep, I'll go over here in just a second. I have our recipe here, which everybody should, if you got the kit, it should come with the kit that we had, or it's also online. So everybody should have, if you're following along, their dough already pre-made, so that we can go ahead and just start with the sculpting and shaping it, and then we also have our supply list here. Awesome. Hi guys. Hi Nicholas. Hi BB. Happy Easter to you too, Laura. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start going over our supplies, so as if people kind of are coming in, but if you want to go ahead and if you want to follow along, we're going to go ahead and use these supplies that I have on my supply list, which is on my Facebook page too. So if you guys want to go back afterwards and follow along, this is what we're going to use. So we did put out the Cherry Blossom kit, but you don't have to have the kit to follow along because you may already have the supplies. So basically we're going to use a 5-petal flower mold. So this is the mold that we're going to be using today. This is one of our molds, and it just has 5 cavities on there of our 5 petal flowers that we're going to be using for the cherry blossom.
But they can use any.
But yeah, you can use any if you have other molds that you would like to use for it. It's totally fine. This is pretty, you know, casual, and whatever you have, we just wanted to make sure that you have some kind of flower mold so that you can have, unless you just want to have buds on your branch, that's fine too. But we're also going to be using our 2 colors of Isomalt today. So these are our 2 brand new colors of Isomalt. This is our retro blue and bubblegum pink. So we have a 6-ounce bag and a 3-ounce bag, so that's how much you're going to be using for the 2 projects. So if you have Isomalt at home, if you want to color these, you can absolutely do that. You can see that they are opaque in color, they're not transparent. That's just going to make the colors pop a little bit more. So if you are using Isomalt that you have at home, you can do them whatever you would like. If you want to change up the colors, if you want to do them transparent, that's fine. But I do mix in white petal dust into these. That's what gives them their opaque color. So if you want to make this kind of exact colors, then you can use white petal dust mixed into with airbrush color, or with, if you just have the colored petal dust, that works too. That's what we're going to be using for our Isomalt, and the amounts, like I said, is 6 ounces of the blue and 3 ounces of the pink. We are going to be using our gingerbread dough here, so I have my dough already pre-made. So this, I already pre-made it. It's not baked, it's still doughy. So this is my construction gingerbread recipe that I was talking about before. This is on my Facebook page too if you missed it. But basically it is going to be super, super sturdy, super strong, and it's also good for sculpting with, or you can cut it out for your flat pieces. You can use any sculpted gingerbread recipe that you like, if you would rather, but this is the one that I recommend, just because I think that from everything I've tried, this one has worked the best for me, and I also like keeping my pieces for a long time, my display pieces, so I like to make them out of the gingerbread dough. I did add a little bit of brown gel color into my gingerbread dough when I was making it, or you can knead it in once we start working with it if you wanted it like a darker color than it originally comes out. That's up to you, and you can also just dust it differently afterwards to add color, so depending on what color you want your branch to be, that is what I'm going to do. Let's see, we also have the oven, so make sure if you're following along, like I said before, to preheat your oven to 350 now before we start so that it's ready to go once we have our branches ready to go in the oven. If you can work near your oven, that would be preferable. If you can't, it's okay, but we are going to be going back and forth and checking the branches about every 5 minutes, so you want to just make sure that you're in a spot, or if you're on your phone, just bring your phone with you, or your tablet, or your laptop, just so that you can kind of go back and forth, but I'll give you guys breaks to do that too. I'll tell you, I'll have mine in there too. So let's see, we're going to need some extra flour to work with the gingerbread dough and put on your work surface, a 6-inch metal cake pan, so I'm going to use an oval cake pan, but you guys can use any shape that you want. If you want to go square, diamond, circle, whatever you guys would like. I just liked the oval one for this. And then, let's see, you can also use a cutter if you have a cutter. If you don't have a cake pan in the shape that you want, you can use a metal cutter on top of a piece of greased foil, or on top of a silicone mat, or the sheet that we used in the last demo, the gold Teflon nonstick. That's fine too. Let's see, cooking spray, paper towels, a silicone work mat when we're working with the Isomalt, a microwave, so I have my microwave, I don't know if you guys can see it yet, but I have it right behind me, so it's ready to go. We're going to use 2 silicone bowls to melt the 2 different colors of Isomalt in, or you can use glass or Pyrex if that is what you have. We're going to use a chef's blowtorch, we're going to use some toothpicks, silicone sculpting tools, so these are the sculpting tools that I have. These are the ones that I use the most, the ones on my website. You can also use sugar shapers, but if you have just regular sculpting tools, plastic or metal, that's fine too.
I have a question.
Yes.
Somebody would like to know what kind of stand you're using with your phone.
With my phone, I am using the Archon mount, so it's super, super awesome. I just got it recently, and I love it. I think it's awesome, and I believe that I also have a code for Archon too.
We'll post it
yeah, I'll post it afterwards, a code for a little bit of a percentage off, so I'll make sure that I post that after. Yeah, if you guys have questions throughout the whole thing, just write them in the chat, and Mom and Dad are going to read them off as we go. And you're also welcome to direct message me afterwards too. So yeah, your sculpting tools, I'm going to use brown petal dust later. The one that I'm using is from the Sugar Art, of course, so I'm using deep brown, or their chocolate brown is, I believe, comparable color to this one that's on their website from the Sugar Art, so it's just a brown petal dust. We're also going to be using pearl dust. The one I have is also from the Sugar Art. Aluminum foil. We're going to use a high-proof alcohol to mix with some of our colors a little bit later. A paint palette, and then assorted paintbrushes. I mostly am going to use detail brushes and flat brushes, and maybe a big puffy brush for our pearl dust once we do that. Let's see, an X-Acto knife, the clear edible glaze spray. The one that I'm using here is from PME. So you can see that it is basically just a clear edible glaze spray. We'll spray that on our finished piece to make sure that the Isomalt doesn't get sticky or cloudy from humidity. And then also we are going to want to wear gloves, right, when working with Isomalt. It's about 300 degrees, so make sure that you're wearing your gloves. I generally recommend a cotton glove with a plastic glove over top of that, or whatever you can find right now, but that's just going to protect your hands. Make sure you don't stick your finger in it or anything like that. Just be nice and cautious and careful. It's, you know, Isomalt isn't even as hot as the oven that we're going to be working with today, so it'll all be good. You guys are used to working with hot stuff if you haven't worked with Isomalt before. So yeah, I think we will go ahead and get started. If you have any questions, like I said, just write them in the chat, and we will go through and answer those. I'm going to tilt my mount down right now, my camera down, so just give me 1 second.
Sidney, the Archon mount code.
Yes.
Archon. Hold on. I've got it. It's at archon.com. Is Simi cakes in small letters, and it's 20% off anything that you purchase there.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah.
I'll write it in the comments too.
Switch this guy. Okay, let's see. So I'm just gonna get this nice and centered. Make sure you guys can see okay. Just gonna wait. There's a slight lag on my iPad next to me for the camera view, so I'm just gonna give it a second to catch up. Make sure you guys can see everything. All right. Awesome. Okay, good. And Instagram is tilted down, right? Done? Instagram? Okay, cool.
Ready to go.
Okie dokie. So, let's see. Okay. Alright, so the first thing that we are going to do is we're going to melt down our blue Isomalt. So, with Simi Isomalt, you just put it in the microwave for 30 seconds and then 15-second intervals. Remember that it's pre-cooked, so it's ready to use. It's basically just a sugar-free hard candy at this point, but because it is pre-cooked and tempered, all we have to do is melt it. So 30 seconds and then 15-second intervals, no temperatures or anything like that. I already have mine pre-melting, but I'm just going to give it a zap in the microwave for another 30 seconds. And then we are going to be doing our base first. So I have my metal cake pan here. This is a very well-loved cake pan, as you can see. But basically we're just going to spray a little bit of cooking spray into the pan. And then wipe that out with a paper towel to make sure it's a nice even coat. And get it up the sides a little bit too. And we're just going to pour our plaque. So I'm just going to be covering enough, or pouring enough to cover the bottom. And I'm bringing my Isomalt up to a boil. So you just want to get it until it starts bubbling. We don't really have to worry about air bubbles or anything in the Isomalt for this. So I'm just bringing it to a nice boil and then we will pour it in. Oh yes, the metal, remember, conducts heat, so remember that once you pour the Isomalt, the pan is going to be as hot as the Isomalt. So make sure that you have this in a place that you're not going to touch it after you pour it, so maybe work off to the side, or that you have oven mitts or gloves on that you can move your pan over, but I would mostly recommend having this somewhere you don't have to move it after you pour it. Okay, so you can see I just brought my Isomalt to a nice boil. It's nice and bubbling. I'm going to let it settle for just a minute before I pour, just because we want to make sure that it's not too hot. And if this was a transparent color, it's just a good habit to get into because all of the hot air will rise and pop and you won't have bubbles in your piece. So I'm just going to let this sit for just a second off to the side. Okay, you can see it's already almost completely settled. Alright, and we're just going to pour in enough to cover the bottom. Like I said, you don't have to make this super thick. This is just going to be a background piece for our cherry blossom to sit on top of. So again, it can be a different shape. It can be whatever you would like it to be. So what we're going to do is just pour this in very, very carefully, wearing your gloves. And there we go. Okay, so you can see I just poured that right in there. And then what I like to do, just to make sure that there's no bubbles that have risen to the surface, I'll just give it a second because hot air does rise so that all the bubbles are slowly making their way to the top here. And then I'm going to lightly torch just very, very quickly. And that is just going to make sure that all those bubbles are popped. Usually I use the other side as the top, but just depending on what you like once you take it out, you may want to use this side as the top. So it's good to just pop those bubbles just in case. And then again, if this is in a spot where you don't have to move it over, it should be good. I'm just going to very carefully move this. Okay. So while that is cooling, we are going to make our gingerbread branch, okay? So I have my dough here. I'm just going to unwrap. Now, as far as the texture of my dough, what I like to do is to get it pretty dry, because the more flour that you add into here, the harder it's going to be and the less likely it's going to be to puff up and to spread once you bake it. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit more flour on my work surface here. But I like it to be really not smushy at all. You can see as I'm trying to stretch it, it kind of starts to crack and break apart. That's what I want because in my, for the way that I like to work with it, I just like it to be a lot more firm rather than too soft and pliable from the corn syrup in it. Alright, so basically you can see I added a little bit of that brown color so it is a nice warm brown, and now I'm going to start shaping my branch. So you have to keep in mind that this still is dough and we are still baking it, so it is going to puff up and expand a little bit. So you don't want to make your branches too thick, otherwise they're going to get way too thick once it bakes and it puffs up a little bit. So I'm going to go a little bit thinner than I think that I need to. Before I start making my branches, I want to grab a piece of tin foil to place my finished branches on. So I'm just going to grab that. If you need a guide for how big to make them, you can always draw or trace your pan with your foil so that you have kind of a basic shape. If the pan was already poured, don't touch it because you don't want to touch the hot metal, but if you have an extra one or you just want to kind of roughly trace out a little shape onto the foil, you can, or you can just eyeball it. You have your pan next to you so you can see if it's going to be way too big or way too small. But basically we're just going to grab a piece of our dough and I'm going to start rolling it and shaping it into a branch. Okay, so see how I'm just rolling it out here onto my floured work surface. I'm going thinner than I think I want it to be. Now this is up to you guys. If you want really tiny branches that can go, onto cupcakes, if you want them to be bigger. I'm making mine in size with my flower mold in the proportions that I want. So you can vary this, of course, but I'm just going to kind of point the tip on one side so it comes to a nice point. And then you can use your X-Acto, you can tear it, you can use one of your sculpting tools, and we're just going to cut a piece off. Now, once I go into shaping it, I'm going to do kind of a specific shape when I do these to get that natural look. What I find works best for me is I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm going to twist. So I'm twisting. The more rough that you can make these, the more realistic they're going to look. So I'm kind of trying to create knots with my fingers. I don't want a ton of lines on the piece. I'm just twisting, and then I'm going to go back at each one of these little knots that I've created and push them together. And that's just going to create kind of like a knot or a nub there to start forming my piece. Now, some of this detail is going to puff out when we bake it, so make sure that you almost over-exaggerate any detail that you really want in there. So you make your little knots a lot bigger and a lot kind of rounder and more defined now, or any angles or anything, just because it will kind of be slightly taken out once the dough puffs. So you see how I'm just pushing together on those knots to create almost places where it's going to bend. Trying not to have too rounded of branches. I like to have really sharp edges when I do mine, but of course this is aesthetic, so if you want to vary this, just kind of play around with it until you're happy with it. Once I'm happy with my first branch, I'm going to transfer that onto my piece of foil here. You can put a little bit of flour on your foil if you want, but I find that I usually don't even need to do that. And I'm just going to set that right on top of my foil and start with my next one. So I can use my excess dough if I want to, or I can start rolling a new piece, and then we're just going to bond shapes together as we go. Okay, so I'm going to separate it here. Create a little point. Really with these, I mean, it's nature, right? It's a branch. It's supposed to be pretty rough and gnarly, so the more you can kind of smush it with your fingers, the more texture you can put in. If you want kind of like a tree bark effect, you can crumple up another piece of foil and kind of imprint it with that. At this point, if you want to use any like a wood texture on it, you could. These don't have a ton of wood texture. They're a little bit on the smooth side, so I'm not going to use any texture mat or anything. I'm just going to go with what I give it here, but you definitely could. Alright. Okay, so now we're going to start attaching our branches together. So I'm going to figure out where I want to put it, and I'm going to grab my sculpting tools. Now, there's a couple things that I do here to make sure that it all looks cohesive. I usually add branches wherever it bends, so it kind of almost looks like they're splitting apart. I'm going to push my two pieces together a little bit, and then I'm going to use my sculpting tools to push them even more. You don't necessarily have to get rid of the seam, but you want them to be kind of bonded together a little bit so that when it bakes, it's going to completely bond itself. Okay, so I'm just kind of pressing the two pieces together with my sculpting tool here, and then going back and just shaping it, making sure it's all in the right shape for me. What I found makes these look the most realistic and have kind of the most movement to them is if you have the points of your branches facing the same way. So you'll notice that these 2 points on the ends of my branches are pointing in the same direction. I don't have them going off in different angles. Of course, that's purely aesthetic, but these kind of have almost like a reaching or a creeping look to them. So what I like to do just to give it that really pretty flow is to make sure that all of the tips on each one of my branches are going to be pointing the same direction. Alright, and then we're just going to keep going. You can do as many or as few of these branches as you would like. I do, as a rule, just try and keep them a little bit thinner, more towards the end, and a little bit chunkier down at the base, but this is kind of up to you how many branches you would like to put onto yours. So I'm just going to keep kind of shaping it and adding in branches wherever I think it needs it. Just blending them together. Does anybody have any questions so far?
I have a little lag, so it may take a minute.
No problem. Since there is butter in this recipe, it's going to react to your hands, so if you find that your dough is getting a little bit too sticky, you can add a little bit more powder onto your hands, or it might aid you in kind of fusing pieces together, so you may want to warm up the ends that you want to stick together. Just kind of play around with it, and depending on how much flour you added too, you can see that even when I'm warming this up, I do have pretty cool hands, but even when I'm really, really working it and warming it up, it's not getting overly greasy or sticky. So like I said, that's how I like my gingerbread to be, and because there's so much flour in it, it's not going to puff up as much, but we are also going to be freezing these, which is going to be a very big thing for these specifically because it will help them from spreading. Let's do a little guy over here. Okay, so I'm just going to put maybe 2 more branches on here, one towards the bottom, and then maybe a little one going off the top. I want to try and keep these relatively uniform as far as they're not going to be super, super thin and super, super thick in certain places, just because the thinner that it is, the faster it's going to bake, and the thinner the area, it's more likely to burn in that spot. So you don't want parts of your branch to be burnt and parts of it to be undercooked or not cooked enough. So I just try and keep them, except for the very tip of it, I just keep them as kind of consistent as I can. I'm going to add one more little branch onto here. So again, I'm just twisting it, and then any knots that it kind of starts to form, I'm pushing back together with my fingers to kind of accentuate those knots. Just going to add one more at the top. You can also piece in little pieces of the dough, so if you have like a hole that you need to fill or a spot that looks like it has a little gap, so like I pressed a little bit too hard with my tool and there's a big indent where I don't want there to be an indent, because again that there is that butter in here, it will blend together really nicely. Even if you have a little bit of a seam, it's just going to act as a kind of indent or texture on your tree later. So I'm just going to fill this back in and kind of make it flow with the branch. Alright. The end I usually just kind of fade off, so I'm just slanting it downwards, almost like it's tucked up and underneath, or it's growing out of the base. And then I'm just going to go back, make sure that this is all bonded. Okay, and then the last thing that I'm going to do before I go ahead and freeze this, or you could do this part after it freezes if you want, I just like to do it now to go ahead and get it done, is I like to make little caps to put on the tips of my branches, because like I said, sometimes the thinner areas will cook faster and you don't want those to burn. So I just make little tinfoil caps, so I'll just kind of tear a piece of foil off here, fold it up, And then I'm just going to make kind of a rounded shape with a little hole here that I can slide over top of each of the tips of the branch. And so that is going to kind of cover and protect the tips of the branches so that they don't burn quite as quickly. You still have to watch it, but I have a couple over here that are pre-made, so I'm just going to cover those up. Maybe if I can get my fingers to work. There we go.
Sydney, we have lots of different countries saying hi.
That's awesome.
Bettina is in Germany. She says hi.
Hi.
And Linda Derlinger, she's in Holland.
That's awesome.
And Mark, he's waving from the Philippines.
Thank you guys so much for watching. It's so exciting.
Where else is everybody from?
Perfect. Alright, so you can see that I just covered up the tips of the branches, and now I'm going to transfer this just onto a cake board, and I'm going to put it in the freezer for about 10 to 15 minutes before I bake it, and that is just going to make sure that it is going to freeze it in place and it doesn't spread as much once you put it in the oven. So I'm just going to transfer this in. It doesn't have to be that long, just until it feels like it's pretty cold and hard to the touch. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this off. Oops. Make sure my little
South Africa.
tinfoil. Wow, that's
Houston.
awesome.
Oregon, Wisconsin.
That is so awesome. Thanks for coming, guys. This is so much fun. I love being able to see all of my cake friends, at least virtually, since we can't see each other in person right now. It's really, really awesome.
Emily's in Salt Lake City.
Hi.
Chicago, New York. Stay healthy, New York.
All right. Dad, would you mind putting this in the freezer for me? Or Mom? This way. Thank you. Okay, so we are just going to freeze that for a couple minutes until it feels cool and hard to the touch, and then we will put it in the oven. So I'm going to just do probably about 5 minutes or so.
Maria is asking, can she use a different cookie dough?
Yes, you can use a different cookie dough. I like to choose, for sculpted pieces, I like to choose one that's going to be pretty durable and not spread too much. I know since this one has corn syrup base, and it's a very, very high flour to corn syrup ratio, so it's very dry. That's why I chose this one, but you absolutely can experiment with using different types of cookies for this.
The one you originally did stood up, right?
Yes, I've also used this on top of pieces, on top of structure pieces, so I actually made a wire form. I have one over here if you guys want to see it. So I actually made a wire form, and I wrapped it in strips. So I rolled out strips of the dough and wrapped it around each of the wires and then added texture. And I baked it 3D right in my oven like that. And as long as you have the wires going all the way out, that's how I did the branches for my trees that I did for my Simi Torch Team collaboration piece last year. There's a picture of that on my website, but that's how I did the gingerbread trees, by adding the structure into it.
Just not for competition.
Right, yeah. If it's something for competition that cannot have non-edible parts, you don't want to do that for sure. So I'm going to switch out my mats for a clean one, since we're going to work with Isomalt here in a minute. I'll give you guys a minute to get your trees done if you're following along at home. We are going to go ahead and pop our pink Isomalt in the microwave now, so I'll pop it in for 30 seconds and then 15-second intervals. My microwave's not quite as strong, so I'm going to put it in for a little bit longer.
Got Arkansas and Las Vegas and Virginia.
I saw Marion from Aruba.
Awesome.
All right. Did everybody get theirs in the freezer?
Okay, so I'm just popping my Isomalt in. Let's check on it. I can see that it's not quite melted. It's gotten pretty warm.
Are you guys melting?
Alright, how's everybody doing? Everybody who's following along, you guys have your pieces in the freezer? Are you melting? Where are you guys at?
We have to wait for the lag.
Yep.
That's okay. So while it's heating, tomorrow she's going to be doing a blown peacock. If you're up bright and early in the U.S. On Cake Flicks.
Yeah, I'm doing the Cake Flicks Caking Around the World demonstration day. Make sure that you guys check that out. It's awesome. They're doing demonstrations for like 12 hours straight.
I think 15 now.
15 hours straight? Oh my gosh. All day. So artists from around the world are going to be. I'm going to be on at 12 p.m. Noon UK time, which is 7 a.m. here in the U.S.
Eastern.
Yeah, Eastern. So a little bit early, but I promise it will be worth getting up for, or there will also be replays. All day too that they will post afterwards, so you can go ahead and check those out after. And I'm super excited for it. It's gonna be so much fun. I'm doing the blown Isomalt peacock. Awesome. Beth has her dough in the freezer and is heating the pink.
And Brooke already has her alarm set for tomorrow.
Oh, awesome! I will see you there.
Oh, and Bennett is going to be on right before you doing Isomalt. You guys are doing 2 hours of back-to-back Isomalt.
Yes, it's gonna be awesome. I cannot wait to see what she does.
A little unicorn, right?
Yes, yeah, this cute little unicorn.
And it's always a blast. You learn something no matter what. It's amazing.
Okay, so my pink is melted. I'm just going to let the bubbles settle. I'm going to grab my flower mold. Now remember, this is a silicone mold, so we don't need to grease this or powder this or anything. We are just going to pour the Isomalt in.
Put on your gloves.
Yeah, make sure you put on your gloves. Don't follow my bad example. Remember, my hands have no heat sensitivity left, so I am not wearing gloves for this, but I would definitely recommend gloves if you have them. All right. Now I'm just going to pour the Isomalt into each of the flower cavities. So you can pour a couple at a time, you can pour one at a time. And then I don't like to fill these up all the way because I don't want my flowers to be too chunky. So I only am going to fill them up partially and then spread it with, you can use your silicone tool, your sugar shaper, your toothpick, skewer, whatever you would like. I'm just using my silicone tools here again.
Sidney, what if the white separates?
If the white separates, go ahead and give it a stir again. What happens is after you put it in the microwave, sometimes any little clumps of color that may have seized together when you mixed it in may break apart. So you'll usually, especially after the first microwave, after you stir the color in, you'll see that the color separates a little bit. Just stir it again, and if you still see little clumps of white, go ahead and microwave it again to a boil, and that's just going to break it all apart. So you can see how I'm just pouring and then spreading, not worrying about rough edges or anything like that. Just spreading it in there. All right. And we're going to let these cool for about 5 minutes or so. I'm going to pop the bubbles on the back just like I did with the base piece, just by very, very lightly torching. Right now, if you had any bubbles that were on the back, if you heat them now, they're going to pop, and there's enough liquid Isomalt around it to fill back over any little craters. But if you pop them later with the torch, it's going to create little holes or little craters in the back of your piece when it's cool. So not that you'll necessarily see that, but I like to do it just as a good habit, because when you are doing transparent pieces, you will see that. So I'm just going to let these cool for about 5 minutes because we want to take these out before they are completely solid so that we can sculpt them and we can give them a little bit of shape and a little bit of movement. All right, so if you have your dough in the freezer, go ahead and go check it, see how it's feeling. If it feels like it's pretty cool and hard to the touch, then you can pop it in the oven, and we're just going to bake at 350 for 5-minute intervals. You will, after you do a couple of these, you'll get a feel for how long it's going to take, but it does depend on how thick your pieces are and how thin they are, or how big they are, so I would just recommend going at 5-minute intervals. I'm going to have Dad go ahead and check my branch for me so I don't have to leave you guys. And you can pop it in. If it's not quite ready yet, you don't have to. You can leave it in the freezer, but if it feels like it's pretty cool, go ahead and pop it in for 5-minute intervals. Set a timer so we don't forget. I always forget, so I have to set my timer.
You want me to set one?
Sure, thank you. Okay. Guys doing okay? Awesome. So like I said, we're just going to give these about 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, depending on your room temperature. If it's really cold in your room, it's not going to take as long for these to set, obviously. If it's a little bit warmer, then it's going to take longer. So just going to let these cool for a couple minutes until I'm going to test with my tool, not with my finger, to see if they're solid. And when they don't make too big of a dent in the back, then we're going to take them out. All right. How you guys doing? Awesome. So I'm going to keep my Isomalt here. We'll probably have to pop it back in the microwave if you get a little bit too thick, especially with thin things like this. I find that the Isomalt works best if it's hotter and more liquidy to pour into your molds. Otherwise, you'll end up pouring way too thick. So I just like to make sure that this is ready to go back in my microwave in a minute. Okay, I'm going to test my pieces. They're just about there. So we'll give it about 1 more minute. How you guys doing? Make sure you report back if your dough is ready. If it's not ready, I want to know. Alright. So the first ones that I poured should be done, but remember, test them with your toothpick. A tiny little dent is okay. You just don't want it to be too liquidy feeling or too squishy. And then I'm going to start kind of flexing my mold. You can see that they're pulling away from the edges here. I'm right under a draft, so it may take a little bit longer for you guys if you're not. But we have our little flowers. Came right out. So you can see that was just at room temperature. It really doesn't take too long. Whoop. Okay, if they are soft enough at this point, you can go ahead and start shaping them. So I just like to give them a little bit of movement. Some of them will kind of be folded over, some of them will be leaning certain directions, some of them will just be slightly cupped. If they are not warm enough to bend, and what we'll do anyway after, is we're going to flip them over and heat up the back. Not only will this clean up the edges, so if you have any rough edges, it'll smooth them out, but it also will reheat the whole thing without melting the detail on the front. So I'm just going to lightly torch around the edges and a little bit in the center so that we add that heat so we can bend our pieces. We're going to give this a few seconds before we touch it because we don't want to touch something that we just blowtorched. So give it about 20 seconds or so.
Somebody asked, where'd you get the bowls?
These silicone bowls, these specific ones are from Pampered Chef. It's a set of 3. They're awesome. I believe this is the middle size. We also have a bowl that comes in our Isomalt Basics kit, but it's a little bit smaller, so better for pouring small little details like beads and pearls. So if you have flower formers, you can use those, but usually Isomalt cools quick enough that you really don't need them. I'm just going to bend them kind of free form, not paying too much attention, so that they all look a little bit different. You can leave some of them flat if you want to, but I like to add just a little bit of movement to them. Makes them look a little bit more natural. And then the one that I bent at first, I want to make sure after that's completely cool and not going to flop or move around on me, I want to go back and torch the edges of that one so that it's nice and cleaned up.
Somebody asked if that is fondant.
This is Isomalt. We're using the Simi Isomalt pre-cooked. It's all ready to go. It does have that opaque color because we mixed in some white color into it, but that's why it gives it that almost porcelain finish. Alright, so we're just going to set our little flowers off to the side, and we're going to pour 1 more round of them. So make sure that you check on your dough if you have it in the freezer, see if it's ready to go in or if it's in the oven. Basically, whenever your timer goes off, just check it after 5 minutes or so, and we will go ahead and just kind of be checking on our dough every 5 minutes as we go, so feel free to run and do that. I'm going to pop my Isomalt back in the microwave so it's a little bit more melted so it's easier to pour, and pour 1 more round.
What are we looking for with the dough?
So when you bake the dough, you want to go until it's a little bit more golden brown. You don't want it to be burnt, especially watch those kind of ends or the thin spots to make sure that they're not getting too well done. But it'll just add color variation, it's okay. But you're basically just going to go until it looks like it's getting a little bit golden brown. And once it comes out of the oven, it's going to solidify in the cool air. So don't stress if it seems like it's still very pliable or soft. You just want it to be slightly golden brown.
How long does it usually take?
With mine, it's going to take about 10 minutes, but I like to break it up into 5-minute intervals. I've done bigger ones before, and it's taken about 15. But at the thickness that I did and the size, that's generally going to take about 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm going to pour another round of my flowers here. I'm just going to do about 10 flowers. Of course, you could do more or less, but 10 is about what I used on the example piece that I posted, so I'm going to do 10. You can vary it too if you have other flower molds that you want to mix in. You could do some smaller ones and bigger ones. It's all up to you. I can't wait to see all the different variations of everybody who followed along. It's always fun to see kind of each artist's interpretation. So see how I'm just filling it partially and then spreading it in just like before. If you didn't quite fill enough, you can scoop a little bit from the bowl on your tool or your toothpick and drizzle that in rather than risking pouring too much from the bowl.
Okay, it's time to check.
It's time to check? Okay, awesome.
I'm gonna go check.
Mom's gonna go check on my dough for me. Okay, how you guys doing? And torch to make sure I pop those bubbles. And it looks like my torch needs to be refilled, so I'm going to do that really quick. I have my butane here. I'm just going to fill into the bottom until it starts overflowing.
Looks good.
Looks good. Need another 5 minutes?
It'll need a few more minutes, but maybe not all of 5.
Maybe not all of 5? Okay, so we'll go 2 or 3 minutes.
Yep.
I'm just going to let my torch hang out for a minute or two for the fuel to stabilize.
It may be different up high, like in Utah.
Yeah, depending on the altitude. Okay, so we're going to let our flour sit for just a couple minutes. I'm going to go ahead and check on my base because it looks like it's done. Remember, don't grab it initially. Tap it with the tool, and then you can kind of feel and make sure that it is all cooled off. Once your base is done, I'm kind of pulling outwards and flexing the pan a little bit to get the air up and underneath. And then I'm just going to flip it over. Ta-da!
If it sticks, what happens?
If it sticks, you may not have put enough grease on it, or the pan may not be as flexible as this one. So what you can do is just place it upside down on the mat. Without touching it, you're going to torch the whole back of it and kind of the sides to get the metal warm, and then it should just slip out.
We have a question from Instagram.
Yes.
Enjoy Sunday Cakes asks, what kind of torch do you use?
I am using the torch that we have on our website. It's super easy because the back of it has a safety lock on and off, but you don't have to hit it every time. And it has a really wide kind of range of sizes for your flame, so that's what I'm using from our website, simicakes.com. But you can use any chef's torch, creme brulee torch. Okay, I'm just going to wipe off the excess grease so that when I go to attach my pieces on, it's going to stick nicely. I have a little bit of variation where I had some white color in here that may have been hiding from me when I was melting it, but I actually think it looks really cool, and our flowers are going to cover that up anyway, so.
Sydney, Stacy, and Virginia said, sorry, she missed the beginning. What did you use to grease it?
I use cooking spray, so you can use any kind of cooking spray. This is the Bake Easy one, but make sure that it does not have any powder in it. It's not the baking spray that has the powder. This one is just oil. So you can use canola oil, vegetable oil, olive oil, any kind of oil spray, just not the kind that has the baking the powder in it, like the floury stuff.
The spray seems to work better than like Crisco.
Yeah, spray definitely. I think it's thinner, and it just spreads easier, and it works a lot. It releases Isomalt a lot easier than like a Crisco or like even just olive oil that's poured. I find that spray is a lot more even and consistent. Okay, so we have our base. We'll set that off to the side for now since we don't need it till the end. Go ahead and check on my flowers here.
I think I'll check on the
Okay.
gingerbread.
Yep, check on your gingerbread whenever your timer goes off, those 5-minute intervals. Alright, I'm going to clean up my flowers again. These are a little bit too hard. I feel like if I try and bend them, they're going to crack. Well, maybe this one's okay. We'll do this guy. But the other ones, I'm going to flip over, clean up those edges, and then shape them. So I'm just very lightly torching. If you over torch, it's okay. Just let it cool off for a couple of minutes on your mat before you pick it up. And then you can always use your sculpting tools to kind of get the shape back in if it turned a little bit blobby. Even on this side, I mean, they look super pretty and kind of delicate if you did a whole bunch of them puffed together.
Mike, I'm going to bring this in, but it's hot. Why don't you come up, please? Sidney, I just want to show it to you because I'm not sure
Okay.
where you want this.
Ooh, that's looking good. Let's go ahead and do another, like, 2 minutes, maybe?
Gotcha.
It still is a tiny bit pale. But that's looking really, really good. All right. Okay, so I have my flowers here. I'm going to clean up the edges of this other flower that I shaped first. There we go. All right, so make sure you let that cool before you flip it over, and then we can put our flowers off to the side for now, and we are going to do some painting and some shading on our branch and on our flowers as well before we put it all together. You guys doing good? Alright, so I'm going to grab a paper towel here to work on, and we're going to paint our flowers while our dough is finishing, so go ahead and grab your pink paint. I'm going to use airbrush color for mine, so this is just from Chef Master. They're pink, and I'm also going to use some pearl dust to paint the whole thing, just because you can leave them kind of this opaque porcelain finish, but I like to add a tiny bit of glint to them. I feel like it makes all of the details really pop. So I'm going to dust them first with some pearl dust. So this is just Super Pearl from the Sugar Art. And I'm going to take a little bit on a puffy brush. And I'm just going to dry dust all of the flowers. And you can see the difference of how shiny and pretty that gets, those flowers. Just catches on the details. I'm kind of blotting it in my palette first so I don't put too much on. I don't want to completely cover up the pink with that white sheen. You could also use pink pearl dust if you want to. All depends on what kind of look you're going for. Alright. Perfect. So we're starting with that. You can do the backs of them too if you want. You don't see the backs too much, so generally I would just go back and do that on the finished piece if I felt like there was a spot that was sticking out that wasn't dusted, just for time's sake, but you definitely can kind of take your time with that. Now I'm going to go in with my airbrush color, and we're going to start coloring over top of these a little bit with some kind of ombre effect. So I'm just going to pour a little bit into my palette. I'm going to grab more of a kind of round brush. You can also use a flat brush, but I'm going to use this rounded brush here. I'm just going to take a little bit of the pink, just a tiny bit, and see how I'm kind of wiping it off and almost drying it off here. And then I'm going to go in a circular motion from the center out to kind of start it. And I'll usually do a couple of these. You can leave them very brush strokey like that, but what I like to do is after it dries, I'm going to go back, and dries just a little bit, not all the way, I'm going to go back and soften that slightly. Okay, so then I'm going to wipe off my brush so that there's not too much on there, go back at those edges, and just kind of see how that softens the color out slightly. It still is a pretty intense effect, but it's just going to soften that airbrush color. So I'm almost keeping the point of my brush into the center of the flower, touching the center of the flower, and then just spinning it circular, and it just kind of softens that color so that it fades outwards nicely. And I think that that adds just a nice variation to the flowers so that it doesn't look too much like a baby blue and a baby pink, which these colors would be perfect, but alright. Oh, beautiful. Okay, here. Let's go ahead and grab our branch here Mom just brought in. Thank you. Okay, so there's our cooked branch. It's still a little bit pliable from being warm, so I'm going to let it cool on a flat surface, but you see how when I take those little foil caps off, you have nice, completely even pieces. Ta-da! So I'm going to put him off to the side to cool for a couple minutes. Behind me. And continue painting my flowers. So I'm just taking little bits of that pink and just softly painting them. I only have paint on the tip of my brush, so the rest of the brush up here has very, very little paint, only what it's kind of picked up, and that's what's kind of giving it that ombre effect. And of course there's lots of different ways that you can paint these, depending on the effect that you want, but for this piece, this is what I like to do. Just add some variation so that it wasn't just two colors with the brown. I wanted a little bit more depth, and a lot of cherry blossoms have this color variation, has these kind of darker centers. Alright, and then just to bring out a little bit more of the definition of the center, I'm going to add the pearl dust with a little bit of alcohol in it for the very, very center of it, just to make it pop. Now remember, this is an artistic interpretation of this, so it's up to you kind of how you want to paint them, but for my artistic interpretation, this is what I found looked the prettiest for me. So, oop, there was yellow on that brush. Let me grab a different brush here. Ah, this is a tiny one. Yellow would be super pretty in the center though too, I'm sure.
So the Instagram may go off temporarily for a minute.
Okay, do you want to start a new broadcast?
I will.
Okay, so Instagram, hang on just a second, because it cuts off in an hour. We don't want to lose you guys, so come back in just a second. We'll start a new broadcast. Make sure to save it or post it if it has the option to do that.
Share the story.
Yes.
And then
Did everybody get theirs out of the oven?
Yep, how's your branches doing? So I'm just adding, it's a pretty dry mix as far as more powder to liquid. You can see I even mixed up a little bit more over here because this one was a little too liquidy and wasn't standing out enough. So I'm just going to paint some of that pearl dust. Doesn't have to be an opaque white, but it just kind of helps the centers of them pop a little bit more. I'm kind of wiping off my brush after painting each one because the pink is going to pick up on your brush and then mix into your paint on your palette. So I'm just wiping off the pink after each one. You don't want to go over these too many times with the paintbrush because then you're just going to start mixing the color with the pink underneath. So I'm just kind of dabbing it on very quickly. And you can just see the difference of how that makes it pop.
okay, Instagram is back.
Alright, hi Instagram!
Part 2.
Part 2.
They only give it an hour.
Okay, all I'm doing is just painting the centers of my flowers with that pearl dust mixed with alcohol, just to make them pop, wiping off my brush in between so that the pink doesn't get too mixed in. There we go. Okay, so we're going to put these off to the side. I don't want to glaze these yet. I want to glaze the whole piece together to make sure that they're all going to stick really, really strong. Sometimes if you glaze pieces individually and then put them together, they're not going to stick as well. So the glaze kind of acts as a barrier. Okay.
They're so pretty.
I love cherry blossoms, and I think it's perfect for spring too. Okay, I'm just going to flip my paper towel here so the pink's out of the way. Here, actually, let me fold it.
Sydney, Diana would like to know, did you mix anything with the airbrush color?
I did not, because I wanted a super vibrant pink, so I did it straight out of the bottle. But if you wanted to, you know, make it a little bit paler, you absolutely could dilute it with a little bit of water. I try not to use alcohol when I use it with colors, because sometimes that can have a chemical reaction and change the color. So if it's a water base, you can use water. If it's alcohol based, then you can use alcohol. But I just did mine right out of the bottle. Okay, and then what we're going to do with the branch is I'm going to grab my brown petal dust. So this is Elite Color from the Sugar Art in deep brown, or their chocolate brown. And I'm just going to grab a little bit of this on a new spot on my palette. And I'm using kind of a puffy flat brush. So you can see this brush has been used a lot. It's kind of almost separating, and I like that for this because some flat brushes can be very, very sharp and can be a little bit too drastic for the effect that I want here. So I like the shape of the flat brush, but I use a lot of puffy brushes like this. I never get rid of my brushes because they give really, really cool texture. So I'm just going to take a little bit of that brown, and then what we're going to do is take the brown on our cooled branch, and we're going to go on the edges and kind of add depth to the piece. So when you're making something that's circular, the outside edges are always going to be darker if it's domed or if it's a sphere or rounded like branches are. So this is going to give it even more of the illusion of being a 3D circular piece. And then we're also going to take this brown and we're going to go into any of the indents and the crevices that you created when twisting and shaping. So if you have any knots, you can kind of shade almost in a circle around them, just very, very lightly to make the center brighter and pop more. And you can do more or less of this depending on how dark you want your branches to be. You can go in with different colors. If you wanted to add even more of like a white pop down the center, you can go in with white petal dust. Okay, so see how I'm just finding any crevices, the indents between two pieces, and just shading those. But you don't want to overshade either, because if you shade the whole thing dark, then you're not going to have shading. You're just going to have a dark branch. So I'm trying to leave the very center of the pieces to be very, very light. Okay. So we're just adding depth. You can also, if you want, if your branch was darker, if you added a lot of gel color, that brown gel color into the dough, you can go in with black or a very, very, very dark brown, or even mix the brown and the black to make it darker. Or you can use a lighter tone if you want a lighter branch. Just depends on aesthetically what you guys want it to look like, and the species too that you're doing. So you can already see the difference between the areas that I've shaded and the areas that I haven't yet. It just makes it look a lot more striking, especially in photos. So if this is something that you're planning to take a lot of pictures for your portfolio or for a photo shoot, shading is always the key to making sure that your pieces pop. Photography tends to dull down things a little bit, so I always make sure that I overshade whenever I know I want it to come out really good on photos. Okay. You can even use a puffy round brush for this if you wanted it to be a little softer and build up the color slowly. Alright, so I'm just going to finish off the base of my branch here. Kind of have a really cool gnarly knot here, so I'm going to make sure that I shade that a little bit to make it pop out more. And that should be good. Alright. Okay, so there is my branch all shaded up. Now we're going to go ahead and start to put the whole thing together. So I'm going to pop my Isomalt into the microwave. I'm going to use my pink here. You could also use clear if you had extra clear from another project. That works great just as glue, because you will be able to use it with whatever color and not see it. But since all of our pieces that we're going to be attaching pretty much are pink, I'm going to use my extra pink in the microwave. So bring it back to a boil. And I'm going to clean out my paints and switch over to assembling. So we're going to grab our base. We're going to grab our flowers. We're going to work right on a silicone mat for this. Okay. Make sure that you wiped off all the oil on your base. And then we're also going to burn off the oil here with our torch, just to make sure that it's going to bond really, really strong. So especially where the branch is going to be sitting, we're going to heat. But just kind of over the whole thing, because we have some flower petals that we're going to add on to here. Okay, so we're not really melting the surface, we're just kind of burning off the oil. And since we have our pink here, that is going to be ready to pour, I'm going to show you how we can do a couple flower petals as well that can kind of be blowing in the breeze. So I'm just popping my Isomalt back in because it wasn't quite heated enough. I'm going to clear a spot over there, and we're going to grab either a toothpick or one of your silicone tools, a nice fine point on your tool to make our petals. Alright, so I have my Isomalt nice and melted here, and essentially what we're going to do for these abstract petals is we're just going to pour little puddles and then kind of pull through them with our toothpick or with our tool. So I'm just letting my Isomalt settle for a second. I'm going to pour a couple drops over here. I try and size them to the size of our flower petals here so that they look realistic, but you may want to have a variety of them just for sizing and spacing. But we're just going to pour little drops on our silicone mat. It's okay if they're not perfectly round because we're about to shape them anyway. And then every few drops, I'm gonna, before they cool, take my tool and I'm just gonna pull in one direction to a point. And I also kind of like to curve it slightly so that it just adds a little bit more personality to them. And then we will add some shading to those in a little bit to give them a little bit more depth. So I'm just gonna pour a variety of these over here before I start assembling my flowers. You could do one little drop, you can do multiple, depending on how dense you want them to look. Do some bigger ones too. Okay. There we go. And I'm just going to pull it to a slight point on the bottom. And then we will go ahead and let those cool. Those aren't going to take very long. They're going to take just a couple minutes, which is why we can do them towards the end, depending on kind of as you start to shape and space, see how many you're going to need. If you want to go petal crazy or if you just want to do a few.
And if your Isomalt gets thick, pop it back in the microwave.
Yes, definitely. It'll make it a lot easier to pour and to attach. So once we go to start assembling, I just like to have my branch kind of ending towards the base. So I'm going to figure out kind of where I want to put it first, because once you attach it, it's attached. You can't move it. So we're going to go ahead and put a little bit of Isomalt onto the back of the piece here. So you can set it down to do this. Don't hold it up in your hand so you don't get any on you. I'm just going to hold it so it's easier for you guys to see. We're going to spread a little bit of the Isomalt on to the back. And then warm to warm sticks better than warm to cool. So if you want to hit the base with the torch really quick before you attach it on, because I know it's going to attach towards that base spot, so I'm just going to heat it. You can do that first before you put the glue on if you want. And then set that guy down, just like that. If it doesn't stick, that either meant that your glue was not hot enough, so it needs to be heated more, or you just need to go a little quicker, or that the oil was still in the way. If you have any little pink strings that may have stuck, you can just lightly torch over those and they'll all melt away. There we go. Okay, so that guy feels pretty secure on there. I'm going to go ahead and start arranging my flowers. So again, I like to arrange them first just to figure out where everything's going to sit the best. I like to do kind of clumps of flowers. I just think that that looks pretty. I have some in between the clumps, but I just like to focus on a couple kind of bouquets of flowers or bursts of flowers. And so I'll just figure out kind of where everything is going to sit nicely. Maybe about there. Let's do it like that. Okay, so now that I have a general idea, I'm going to pop this back into the microwave, get it nice and hot, and we're going to do the same thing of just adding a little bit of glue onto our flowers. Now with our little flower petals, once they're cool, you can see they're just going to pop up here. If you would like to add some texture to them, you don't have to, but if you would like to add a little bit of texture to them, I will take my flat tool, so this is just like a little flat paddle tool, It's silicone too, so it's going to imprint really nicely. And I will heat the base towards the point of each of my petals, and then add just some little lines coming from the center almost. And that's just going to give it a little bit of texture.
You might have to hold that up.
Sure, I can do that. So I'll hold this up so you guys can see. How it just has some lines in it coming from the very center where it would have torn off of the flower. And that just adds a little bit of something there, just so it's not completely smooth and flat. But they look pretty smooth too. Remember, it's an artistic interpretation, so. Okay, and then I'll hold it up so Instagram can see. Okay, so I'm just going to do that to a couple of my flower petals here. And you want to make sure that you give it about 5 to 10 seconds before you touch it, otherwise it will stick to your tool, but it'll release once it's cool.
I think this would be so pretty on the outside of a gingerbread house at Christmas.
That's
like
a great
creeping
idea. Yeah, you could
up
do
the
it.
wall.
Definitely. You can kind of have it in the yard. You can creep it up the wall. You can change this too. I mean, I think that these would be super cool for, I've used these for like Halloween trees. So you can not put anything on them. Maybe put some cobwebs or spider webs on them, or, you know, have something kind of spooky, or do foliage on them. Make them more fall themed. You can definitely do these. Like I said, I did this for my gingerbread collaboration piece for the Simi Torch Team collaboration, and I did them bare, like they were almost like trees that had died for the winter, and then I put snow all over them. So lots of different things that you can do.
All of the KB Sue molds also work really well with the Isomalt, and that would be beautiful because they're like perfect.
Yeah, you got those really, really beautiful flowers. Okay, so I reheated my Isomalt, and then I'm just going to basically add a little bit of Isomalt onto the back of my flower and stick it where I want. It'll stick to the gingerbread, it'll stick to the Isomalt. Alright. So I'm just kind of placing them in here. And then I will use my flower petals to fill out any other spots that I would like afterwards. So I always, kind of as a rule, start with my biggest pieces and then work my smaller ones around it, or my favorite pieces. If I have a favorite piece that I want to make sure is highlighted, that's kind of how I go about figuring out where I want everything to go. Okay, so we'll put this guy down here. You can use royal icing or chocolate if you want to attach these two, because they're not super heavy, but Isomalt's going to be the strongest. I really think that these would be beautiful if you did them on cupcakes too, or desserts. If you had maybe a slightly tinier flower on it. Just like that. Get a little bit of that pink on there. It should just pop right off. And then I'm just going to place my petals here.
Sid, one quick question.
Yes.
Marcia wants to know if you could also slightly torch the back of the flower to attach.
Yes, you can. That's actually what I'm going to do for my petals, is attach them on with the torch, but you just want to make sure that it's going to be strong enough. So like the flowers, I want them to be super, super strong on there. So I'm going to use the extra glue, and just because I had it heated, but you absolutely can just torch if it's a light enough weight piece. Okay, some of these petals, just from imprinting them and dragging them, they got a little bit misshapen. So the same thing like we did with the flowers, I flip them over and torch the back, and that'll kind of bring them back into a smoother shape. I like to do my petals kind of in cascading patterns, so they're not all pointing the same direction. They're kind of flipping into different directions, like they're blowing in the wind. I might trim this little guy up because he's a little bit crooked. So with these, I can just trim them with scissors into a slightly better point.
Stephanie says they're so pretty.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Happy birthday, Stephanie.
Yeah, happy birthday.
We didn't get to be with you on your birthday.
We'll celebrate extra next time we see you. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just going to not torch the petal because I don't want to accidentally torch me or have to pick it up. I'm just going to torch the base a little bit and stick it down. I think that one already stuck from when I heated it. and then I'll go back and paint. I find with little tiny things like this, if I paint them first, I always smudge the paint when I go to pick them up, so I'm just going to go back with a little bit of my pink paint from my palette here, and I'm just going to paint a tiny bit onto the base. And I'm going to do that same thing where I kind of paint on darker at first. I'll let this dry for a second and kind of wipe off my brush. And then I'll just blend that in so it's a little bit softer.
Kathy loves it.
Thank you, Kathy. How are you guys doing? You have your pieces starting to assemble? Have you already assembled? If you're following along at home, even if you're not doing it right now and you just recreate the project at some point, if you're watching at a later date or you're watching first and then going to go do it, I'm going to put out a post and make sure that you post your picture in the comments so that we can all see each other's projects. So if you're creating this, make sure, you know, we may not necessarily be friends with each other on Facebook, so make sure that you go to my Facebook page, or for Instagram, go to my Facebook page, and on the page that I'll put out right after this, comment your photos of your finished piece so that we can kind of show them off and see everybody's different ideas and their different interpretations of it.
Patricia says it's gorgeous and so perfect for April in DC.
Thank you. Yes, definitely.
We're missing it. We're
I know.
Sorry to miss it.
We were so sorry that we couldn't come to the Virginia show. Unfortunately, they weren't able to have it. And it's always during cherry blossom season, so maybe next year we'll get to come see the cherry blossoms and see everybody. Okay, so you can see I have all of my pieces on. Like I said, you can add as many or as few as you would like. I'm going to flip it around here so that Instagram can see. You got that?
Emily says her 5-year-old is having the time of his life because he likes the like and heart buttons. He's a super fan.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. All right, so remember that the last thing that we want to do with our Isomalt pieces is to spray it with the clear edible glaze, and you can also spray onto the gingerbread as well, and it will keep it from getting affected by the humidity. So if you feel like your cookies or your gingerbread sometimes get soft from the moisture in the air, if you're in a humid place like me, this will help as well. It'll make it slightly shiny, but that does dull out after a couple minutes when it dries. And so I'm going to spray away from all my tools. You don't want to spray on a silicone mat or near any of your tools. I cover an entire area with plastic or with paper towels or anything like that, and then coat the whole thing with the clear edible glaze spray, and that's just going to make sure that it doesn't get sticky or cloudy and it stays nice and shiny and beautiful for weeks. I've even had pieces for months. So that's kind of your secret weapon to keeping everything nice and shiny.
Could you also do the branch with Isomalt?
You absolutely could. Yeah, you can pour the Isomalt out. If you have a mold for it, you can pour it into a silicone mold, or you can hand sculpt it. So pretty much the same way that I twisted and kind of created knots. I have a YouTube video on how I do pulled Isomalt. If you pull the Isomalt into a clay first, you can make the branch out of Isomalt. I find that like bronze colors work really pretty for this because it really shows the twistiness. So like golds and bronzes and coppers that have that luster dust in it, but I think any color would be beautiful. You guys have any final questions? Like I said, if you have any questions after this, if you're watching the replay, which I will post on my Facebook page, I will definitely make sure that you can direct message me. You can comment on here and I'll go back and watch them. But make sure if you have any questions, absolutely you can ask at a later time. I'll be happy to answer. And like I said, go ahead, here I'm going to switch this upwards. Go ahead and comment your finished pieces too so that we can all see each other's.
Margarita sends you a big kiss from Florence.
Hi Margarita, we miss you.
Oh, Kathy Brinkley says a deer head mold that we have would work really cool on this plaque.
Oh, that's a good idea. Alright, perfect. Yeah, I don't know if you guys can hear, it just started raining here in Florida.
First time in a month.
First time in a month, pretty much, yeah.
We need it then.
Yes. Alright, perfect. And yeah, I will have the replay of this on my Facebook page and also on my YouTube. I just posted the one that we did last time, the Ladybug Shaker Cookie. That one's on my YouTube as well, so if you missed that, go ahead and watch it. And yeah, same thing with Instagram if you have any finished pieces. Let's see the finished piece here. Alright. You guys have any final questions? I can't wait to see all your pieces. I'm so excited. Make sure to tag me if you recreate them and to post it to the post I'm going to put out right after this so that everybody can see.
And we got lots of emails about ideas for projects.
Yeah, I was getting a whole bunch. I asked you guys last time, and please let me know this time if you have any ideas for future lives, if you guys would like to do another project with me. I was playing around with a little bit with some different ideas, and I have a piece to show you guys if you would like to see what I was thinking. If you guys would be interested in doing another one of these where we kind of play along together, I was thinking, what about a freeform sculpture? So we have some flex form pieces here. We have some butterflies. I can kind of hold it up so you can see the realistic butterflies on there. They are transparent, so it's all Isomalt. If you guys would be interested, let me know. I would love to kind of have you guys' input, or if you have any other ideas for things that you want to learn, let me know. But I was just playing around and put together this little sculpture here, so let me know if you guys would be interested in that. Set him down over here. And yeah, any other ideas? I have a couple other ideas too for the future. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure to let me know.
They're ready to do it again.
Awesome! Me too. I'm so excited. I've been loving watching all the lives on everything. It's just awesome to be able to see all of our cake friends.
Tomorrow on Cake Flix.
Yeah, remember I will be tomorrow on the Cake Flix channel. I shared it on my page if you want the link to that on my Facebook page. I will be demonstrating on the Cake Flix channel for their Caking Around the World event, their all-day of live stream. So I will be at 12 noon UK or 7 a.m. On the east coast of USA.
And then on Wednesday?
Oh yeah, and on Wednesday I will be on the Icing Images Facebook page doing some paint your own Isomalt stain class. So make sure you tune in on Icing Images page for that on Facebook.
We have some people who would like to see the Ziotto pen.
Ooh, now I have some ideas for the Ziotto pen that I want to start putting out. I did just put out a little tutorial that I did of making my Isomalt robin eggs using the Ziotto pen, but we have a lot more ideas for videos that we're going to do in the future.
And Myra's going to be doing it with you, right?
Yes, Myra, the inventor of the Ziotto pen, we're going to do some stuff together. She has some videos on her page as well.
And I know you and Nicholas Lodge, Chef Lodge, have some plans.
Yeah, we have a whole bunch of different plans for different techniques that we want to show, but we always love different ideas too. So if you guys have anything specific you would like to learn, again, let us know. Awesome. So yeah, I will go back and answer any comments that I may have missed, or if you have any questions, make sure to direct message me them. Same thing on Instagram, you're welcome to direct message me, and I will be happy to answer them, and make sure that you tag me in pictures when you use it. Thank you guys so much. I hope that you enjoyed it. I can't wait to see your pieces, and we'll see you next time. Yeah, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.